This is the story of StoneLove. By the end of the Brothers' War, the realm was devastated. At that time, there was an old soldier who was out walking the countryside from town to town. He was known as the Unknown Soldier because no one ever learned his name, where he came from, or where he was going. The unknown soldier limped into the village using a broken spear as his walking stick. As he approached the well to get a drink, he saw a crippled veteran who had lost both of his legs. The unknown soldier knew that the cripple was a veteran from the remnants of the uniform he still wore. As the unknown soldier walked past him, the crippled veteran asked for a drink. The unknown soldier replied, "I will gladly get you a drink of water from the well." The crippled veteran said, "Oh, I don't need water. I need hard alcohol. I have nothing left. I have no legs. I have no job. All I have left is getting drunk." "Ah," replied the unknown soldier, "I understand. Can I sit and talk with you for a while?" The crippled veteran replied, "Certainly." The unknown soldier sat beside the crippled veteran and explained that he too had nothing left to his name. While he had been out fighting the war had come to his home village. The war had killed all of his family and all of his friends, and destroyed the village such that there was no longer stone upon stone where his village had once stood. All that the unknown soldier had left was the stone that he had picked up as he walked through the ruins of his home. The unknown soldier pulled a small velvet bag out of his satchel. He opened the velvet bag and took out the stone. He told the crippled veteran that the stone represented his family, friends, and everything that he had loved and been fighting for. With his words, he painted an idyllic picture of the people and buildings of his home village. The crippled veteran started to cry because he didn't have anything like the stone. The unknown soldier said, "I will share the stone and my memories with you." The unknown soldier placed the stone on the well, and they both stared at it. The crippled veteran realized that he too loved his home, and he was proud that he had fought to protect it. The storyteller came out of his home and was walking down the street when he spied the two old soldiers staring at the stone. The storyteller made his living by telling stories, but in order to be able to tell stories, he always had to find new ones. When he saw the two old soldiers staring at the stone, he knew there was a good story involved. So he walked over and asked the soldiers, "What are you doing here?" The crippled veteran explained how the war had destroyed everything in their lives, and that all they had left was the stone, which represented everything they had loved in the world. The storyteller sat and listened to them talk. The storyteller asked if he might learn their story in order to retell it. The crippled veteran replied, "Yes, please. I would love to hear you tell our story." The storyteller asked him many questions that he might get all the details correct. The storyteller realized that he loved collecting and retelling stories. The musician came out of his home and was walking to the inn to perform that evening when he saw the crowd gathered beside the well. He thought to himself that the people in the crowd might appreciate his music, so he walked over and asked the storyteller, "What are you doing here?" The storyteller explained how the war had destroyed everything, and all that they had left was the stone, which represented everything they had loved in the world. The musician thought that this was very interesting, so he sat and listened to them for a while and noticed how their love changed the tone and quality of their voices. The musician asked if he might compose a tune for them. The storyteller replied, "Yes, please. I would love to hear your music." The musician took out his flute and started to play, softly at first, and no particular tune. He played what he felt as he listened to everyone talk. Before long, the music was loud, joyous, and beautiful. The musician played his new tune and realized that he loved creating and performing music. The artist heard the music, looked out his garret window, and saw the crowd of people gathered beside the well. He wanted to do a sketch of the gathering, as it was one of the happiest sights he had seen since the end of the war. So he left his home and walked over to the gathering. Everyone was smiling and listening intently to the music. The artist waited until the musician paused his performance and then asked, "What are you doing here?" The musician explained how the war had destroyed everything, and all that they had left was the stone, which represented everything that they had loved in the world. The artist observed that this was a most joyous gathering, so he sat and watched them for a while. He noticed how their love enlightened their faces. The artist asked if he might sketch the scene. The musician replied, "Yes, please. I would love to remember what this looks like." The artist sketched the scene and realized that he loved capturing and sharing the beauty of an image. The innkeeper wondered where all of his customers were, and looked out the door of his inn, and saw the crowd gathered by the well. He walked over and looked at the sketch that the artist was creating. The innkeeper loved the sketch and wanted to commission the artist to reproduce the sketch on the sign of his inn. The innkeeper watched as the artist finished the sketch and then asked, "What are you doing here?" The artist explained how the war had destroyed everything in their lives and that all they had left was the stone, which represented everything that they had loved in the world. The innkeeper thought that this was a most joyous gathering and asked if everyone would like to come to his inn. One of the villagers heard his request and said, "The innkeeper loved money more than anything in the world and wanted them in his inn because he could not charge them money when they were in the street." At that, the innkeeper started to cry, for he didn't love money more than anything in the world. What he loved was being an innkeeper and providing a safe space, a clean bed, and good food for the travelers. But that had all been destroyed by the war. No one traveled nor had money to spend. The innkeeper had to charge what he did in order to buy fresh supplies. The innkeeper replied, "I would love to have all of you in my inn. I will provide food and drink for everyone, and there will be no charge." So they all went inside, and that night the village came to life again. Before long, everyone was inside the inn. The crippled veteran was drinking water. The storyteller was telling this story. The musician was playing his new music. The artist was finishing the painting on the inn sign. The villagers were talking, singing, and dancing. Everyone had a lovely time. The next morning, the unknown soldier said, "I'm sorry, but I have to leave now. My brother's daughter is alive and alone, and I have sworn to find her." All of the people who had spent the night in the inn said, "Oh no, you can't leave us now. You have made our lives wonderful again." The unknown soldier said, "No, I didn't. You all did that yourself. I just helped a little." The crippled veteran said, "No, it was the stone that made all the difference in the world." The unknown soldier smiled and said, "Well, in that case, I will leave the stone here in the inn as a gift to the village, for everyone to see whenever they need to be reminded of last night." So the unknown soldier set the stone on the bar and left the inn. The crippled veteran gave the unknown soldier his spare cloak to keep him warm. The storyteller gave the unknown soldier the story of StoneLove, that he might tell it to others. The musician gave him a copy of the tune that he had composed, that he might play it for others. The artist gave him the sketch of the gathering, that he might show it to others. The innkeeper filled his satchel with food and drink, and the villagers collected money to fill his wallet. The unknown soldier said goodbye to everyone as he slowly limped out of the village. They never saw him again, except for one little boy who followed the unknown soldier to the stream at the edge of town. The little boy watched as the unknown soldier waded through the stream, reached down, picked up a stone, and put it in his velvet bag.